Hi, hello, and welcome to Measuring the Rainbow by Accenture. We have lots of things to tell you today. With that, I'll start with my own introduction. So this is me. I'm Javier Leonor. I'm Spanish. I'm living in Amsterdam, where I am now, and it's getting dark. I've been 20 years with working on IT consulting. I am always involved in cloud and network operations, I would say, and also I'm part of the Global Inclusion and Diversity team at Accenture. On a personal note, I love musicals, I like meeting new people, and I love flying. And by flying, I mean being on a plane, not just going on holidays like everyone does, but I do like to fly, even if it's economy, I don't really mind that. I'm also a foodie, I like to eat, and I'm also gay. So with that, I'll go to the next speaker. Christian.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. Christian Winslow. I've been with Accenture 20 years in marketing, and I'm from San Francisco, born and raised. And where I'm at today in my life is I'm married. Next week is my second year wedding anniversary with John, and we have a boxer, Diego, and we're camped out at home just like everybody else. So I have built a little home gym. That's where I spend a lot of time when I'm not working, and I identify as gay. I'm thrilled to be with you here this morning. Over to you, Stephen.
Thank you. Hi all, my name is Stephen. I'm a senior marketing analyst here at Accenture on our global business marketing team. I focus specifically on Pride, and I also co-lead our Pride ERG in Dallas, Texas, where I currently live. Just on the slide are a few of my favorite things in life. My fiance Andoni and our youngest cat, we have a few. And one of my favorite things is also to travel, so I can't wait to get back into the full swing of things with that as well. And I also identify as gay. So I guess let's go ahead and dive into the presentation. Over to you, Christian.
Yeah. So maybe just a bit about Accenture, just to set the context. So Accenture is a big consulting company. We're Fortune 500. We have over 500,000 people globally and serving 6,000 clients in 120 countries. We have 7,400 patents. So we're heavy on I&D and R&D research. And we are we have a lot of focus on technology, but also on things like strategy and heavy emphasis on digital these days, of course. And we've been working on I&D and LGBT inclusion and diversity for a long time at Accenture, since over 25 years now, since when I started. So maybe we can go into the timeline a bit about how Accenture's been doing this. So we began back in the 1995s and began looking at how we incorporate I&D into our company, how we establish employee resource groups, launching women's initiatives, becoming very involved in International Women's Day, and on the LGBT side, beginning to offer guidance in terms of training and leadership support, and started our first series of employee resource groups network events back when I was a kid in San Francisco, one of the first ones we had when I was there. And at the same time, a little over 10 years ago, began incorporating same-sex benefits at Accenture. I know that really helped me, when I started with the firm, and helped me and my domestic partners at the time, as we were officially called, and really gave me a solid footing within Accenture, and in a way that I never felt before that I could have had outside Accenture. So I always felt at home and taken care of by the firm in tandem with all the work we're doing, internally on I&D, and that's something that Javier is going to dive into now a bit more detail, especially how we launch our Pride networks. So Javier, you want to talk a bit about that?
Yes, Christian, thank you. So as you can see on the screen, lots of information, lots of text, so I will not cover everything. Maybe a few highlights that we started adding benefits in 2010, 2011. We also have been supporting externally, any kind of change in legislation or things that affect our employees as well, not only in the US or Canada, but just everywhere in the world. And in 2016, we decided to rename the network. It was called LGBT back then, and we thought that it didn't actually cover everything, and in some parts of the world, we say LGBTQ, LGBTI, LGBT+, LGBT, so many things. So we decided to rename it to Pride. So the name of the ERG, the name of the network is Pride at Accenture. And right now we have around 90 different ERGs or networks in different cities and in 45 countries. So actually we went from, the days where Christian was a kid, as you were saying, to the days that where we have many of the kids as well, who are really happy to see how you can be yourself at work. And with that, we go to the next one. That's for you, Christian.
Yeah, so the reason I wanted to talk about this briefly before we dig into like the I&D initiatives we have at Accenture is, as we were growing our I&D initiatives and LGBT initiatives internally, we also had a lot of support in our leadership, both internally and externally. And as we got really involved in this, we started getting more involved outside Accenture in terms of forums, international forums and local forums and with clients. And, that's really where I, saw a lot of like my own personal like fulfillment with Accenture, like how I could help was starting some of these initiatives. And so we began, for example, with the big, World Economic Forum events in Davos, starting these LGBT live webcasts live from Davos with these breakfast panels. And we did that for a couple of years just to like get everyone's attention around LGBT on the agenda, and others were very involved on the ground as well. So particularly Microsoft and EY and Salesforce, many others of us working on the ground to get visibility around LGBT. And so these are the kinds of efforts that we like to do, get our name out there and get our partners involved in getting high on the agenda. It also, we feel and the feedback we got, our people love seeing that, love seeing everything that we're doing internally and taking that externally. And so we became very involved with these initiatives, and eventually ended now with the World Economic Forum doing a joint initiative on LGBTI with many others now. In the beginning stages, working with UN on their standards of conduct for business around LGBTQ, and getting involved and helping to write that, help launch it, and promote that to our clients as well to join in, where they have over 300 participants at the moment, signatures, and I think there's a session on that as well during the agenda here at our Eagle conference. And we began doing these events as well as we started doing these things externally. We started doing them with clients. So we started developing some research within Accenture, firstly on I&D, and what it meant in terms broadly, in terms of like the workforce. And then we started branching out into special kind of niche sections, and we launched our first cut specifically on LGBT this year. And we took some of these research that we've been doing, taking them to clients, and then organizing client workshops. And what we found is that there is a huge interest in this, in learning from each other, because that's how these things get developed. Someone has to start doing these things. And we found that a lot of our clients are coming to these events just to learn more and to learn from each other, just like we're doing here at this conference. And so, and that's, part of, how we work with Out and Equal and other organizations is in that spirit, just to take it out, share, make it broad and applicable to everyone's situation. And find that it's got a lot of attention and means a lot for people, our workforce within Accenture, our employees, to see us putting it out there and putting our heart where our values are. So very proud to take part in those initiatives. Now I think Javier wants to go deep dive into some of the major initiatives we're doing within Accenture internally that we can share with you.
Yes, thank you, Christian. So as mentioned, we do lots of things externally, and people are really happy to always see something in the news or, wave a rainbow flag whenever we have the chance. But how do we do it internally? How do we make sure that our employees also feel included and empowered and, part of the conversation? So these are the things I will be covering in a moment. I forgot to ask, to mention that if you have any questions, I think there is a chat function. This is the first session we do, so we may have to work a little bit with technology, trying to get used to how it works. But if you have any questions, by all means, please put it on the chat, and Stephen or Christian can raise it up as we go along. Otherwise, it's only me talking, and I think we don't want to have that. So thank you for any question you may have. So I'll talk about the things that you see on the screen. How do we measure? How do we do it? How do we actually quantify the inclusion for LGBT employees? Who is involved? How does it work? What are some of the results? And how you can get started? Okay. So how do we do inclusion? I think we do it by a combination of things. You see it on the screen there. We always have inclusion and diversity employees in each country. So there is always someone part of the human resources team that is, is full-time or part-time engaged in ensure that inclusion and diversity is part of our business. And that person actually takes care of all the segments we have within inclusion and diversity. That could be gender, could be ethnicity, could be pride or LGBTQ as we call it. Or it could be, for example, ethnicity, again, veterans, anything that we have basically would be falling on that category. We also have the networks and the ERGs, and I mentioned we have 90 of them. So they're also very useful and very valid in getting, things down from the ground and, hanging things here and there, planning meetings, having sessions in which we share information with allies. But next to that, we have also lots of IT tools. We are a technology and consultancy company, so we actually are quite good at doing, programming and all those things. So you'll see a few of the things that we have done to measure the rainbow, as we call it. You see, we have a self-ID tool, which is something not specifically, exciting, but it's very useful in terms of getting information from your employees about, where they are, how are they advancing, are they promoting at the same rate as others. We also have an automatic ally sign-up tool. So basically, I can go as an employee, click on one link and become an ally for example, LGBTQ, or for disabilities, or for mental health as well. So those things are really useful to know who's an ally and who's not, and then you can communicate with them a lot. And we also have, which is one of the main things in this presentation, what we call the Pride Scorecard, which is a tool in which employees, IND people and HR can measure how we perform in, let's say, France, the UK, Italy, US. And then you can see how countries are advancing or sometimes maybe not advancing as the others. So let me see. So why do we need data? That's another question that we may have to go and cover, is that if we don't measure, we don't know where we are. If we want to get there in 2 years or in 3 years from now, we have to know where we are now. So we need to know how many LGBTQ employees do we have. We need to know where they are, if they are at senior levels, or they're maybe at junior levels, if they're in India or if they're in Indianapolis. So I think we need to make sure that we have some data for that. We also need to see the difference between different countries and offices. It's not the same being LGBT. I'm guessing, again, I'm asking or I'm speaking for Christian in San Francisco, that it may be in some of the small offices that we have across the country. So I think that seeing how different offices are performing is also kind of useful as well. We also want to make sure that we include everyone. The Pride family or the Rainbow family is very, very diverse. And it's not only just 5 letters, there's many other things next to that. So we want to make sure that we start accommodating and including non-binary colleagues or gender fluid colleagues, or things that probably are overlooked sometimes. We want to make sure that we include everyone in our measurements. We may have gaps, we may be doing really well on this part, but we actually are neglecting the other part. So we want to make sure that that we kind of where are the things that we are doing properly and what are the things that we need to put more attention on. And also we want to reward and kind of congratulate those countries or those cities that make actually good progress, because they are doing this. Most of the ERGs, as some of you will know, is actually something that you do next to your job. So actually you have your day job, and then you have, as I always say, your gay job, which is basically your inclusion or your ERG job that you have after the day has finished. So those are the reasons why we want to have data. Good. So we have 2 main tools that I will cover today: Self-ID and the Pride Scorecard. So I'll start with the Self-ID one. It's basically a tool that we have online. You can see the screen there. You go and you click, and you can identify yourself as being part of the LGBTQ+ family. These are some of the questions you have. You have some definitions. What is LGBTQ? What is LGBT+? What is gender identity? What is non-binary? Because I guess not every employee can be familiar with those terms. I must say as well that this is something we do in probably, I think, our employees, in terms of 82% of the employees have access to this. In continental Europe, where I am, in everywhere except the UK and Ireland, we are legally not allowed to answer this question, so we cannot answer it. I'm still working with the legal teams in the European Union to see if we can find a way do that, actually. Okay, very good. Then these are some of the metrics that we answer. So basically, we ask our employees, what is your gender identity? And then you see there, you see, majority of male, then female, then non-binary, others, I prefer not to say. So basically, you have already, when people are saying, what is the non-binary population, we already have it in our workforce, and we are happy to make sure that they find their place as well. The next question is, what is your sexual orientation? And then you see a bit of what should be not a surprise, a majority of gay men. In most of the ERGs, there's an overpopulation of gay men, and I'm one of them, so I have to apologize for that to the rest of the groups. And then we have a quite large population of bisexual colleagues, 25%. So it's kind of interesting that actually when we found out this, and we have this tool since 2017, were we doing any programs or any communications or any kind of awareness initiatives about bisexuality? And we were not. So you can actually see how the data can help you see the gaps that we had or the things that we were overlooking. Then we have, for my own taste, a bit too small group of lesbian colleagues. It's only 13%, so I think it would be wonderful if we would have more women in our groups. And then we have a kind of large group of prefer not to say and others. So you see that, I guess every company will be different, and this goes, this changes through the years. It's not that what we had in 2017 is what we have now, but I think it's really good to see how the trends go, and if we are having more and more men and less of the other groups, then we may want to do some things as well here and there.
We do have a few questions.
Yeah, sure.
Questions about self-ID. The first one is, how do we work around it in regards to data privacy in Europe? How does self-ID sort of work in those regions? So
that's a very good question, and it's my biggest nightmare. So thank you for that, Stephen. For continental Europe, I'm working with Spain. We got it approved for Spain, so actually we now can deploy it in Spain. So that will be the first country in continental Europe that will have it. But for France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Belgium, Portugal, we're still discussing with the legal team. So I think we have to be honest, we don't have a solution for that. One solution we had in the past is to do an anonymous survey. So you can actually, this is something that is linked somehow to the employee, but if you want to do something totally anonymous, something like if the employee is happy with their work or not, you can do that on the site. But for Europe, unfortunately, we're still trying to find a way to comply with the laws and also get the information.
Great. And Joseph says this is the first year that they're implementing it. So they want to know about any strategies that have worked in terms of being able to connect self-ID with their employees.
One question that we didn't ask, and that's very useful to know, for example, and we are going to do it in the next version of the tool, is we want to ask actually people, and you'll see the next question coming up, is where are they in the organization? Are they part of sales? Are they part of marketing? Are they part of HR? Are they in a call center? Are they, and also what is their level? Are they senior? Are they junior? I think we have some tools to manage that information, but sometimes it's more useful to have it in the same survey as well. So I would ask something about those things so that you can see how the career development of those people have been through the years. And one question also we are going to add is we want to ask, let me go to the next questions, Stephen, and then I'll answer what we want to answer. So basically, the next question is, do you identify as? And then you have cisgender, transgender, gender non-conforming, prefer not to say, or others. So you see again that it's far from binary and it's far from actually boxes. So we want to make sure that we have more than enough boxes to accommodate everyone. The last question that we have is actually, to whom have you disclosed at work? Not about your private life, not about your family or your friends, but to whom have you disclosed at Accenture? And then you see everyone is 43%, and these are global numbers again, so it's not for a certain country. And most people 11%, some people 14%, one person, only one person, 1%. No one, because otherwise assume their the identity or your orientation correctly. No one, I don't want to disclose, 7%. I prefer not to say 4%. So here I will focus on two numbers. One is everyone. We monitor how many people are actually telling everyone or are comfortable with it themselves at work. And that has grown from 33% in the last, I think, 3 years to 43%. And we also monitor on the prefer not to say, on the no one, and on the one person, because we kind of have the impression, but again, it's just our interpretation from the numbers, that people are somehow not confident or not at ease at work. Basically, they don't want to disclose for whatever reason. And one of the questions that I would like to add, Stephen, going back to the question you had is, I think we would like to do a follow-up question about why have you decided to disclose, and why have you decided not to disclose? Because it could be, it could be because you're a confident person and Accenture is doing a horrible job, but you're just very confident that you want to disclose. Or it could be because actually we are doing a terrible job and you don't feel that this is the environment where you want to disclose. So, so that's a couple of lessons learned that we have that we want to make sure that we add them for the next version. I don't know if I'm answering all the questions, Steven, or there's maybe another one.
They keep pouring in. So I think another one is, given the sensitive nature of this, how we communicate to people that we're going to be protecting this data, who has access to it, and sort of what it's used for. So a few points there.
Very good. About communication, you always have to say what you're going to do with the data. So we inform that we're going to get this data to get, influence our programs and see where we have to work more or work less or adapt. So that's something we do. There's a huge disclaimer when you join this or when you go to this page, and then, I think it's about one page. And we try to make it in simple language, so we don't want to use terms that people will not be easy to understand. So we want to make sure that people know that this is something voluntary. They can change the information anytime. They can delete it. If they move away from the company, this gets deleted. If they move between countries, if someone would go for the US, from the US to Canada, it would get deleted. So they have to do it again. So we want to make sure that privacy is very, very well arranged. It's also very, very secure in terms of IT. It's in a separate database that is not linked to the normal, let's say, HR human resources database. And only one person per country has access to that. So basically what I got access is the numbers, so I can see, total numbers like I'm showing you. But for example, my colleague Melissa in the US, she can actually see the numbers for the US. My colleague Stephen in London can see that for London. So basically, I think that is very important that that is well arranged. For example, the access to that database is revoked every 3 months, and I have to reapprove it again for them. So basically, if I switch roles and I would stop doing this and I would go to do something else at Accenture, I would lose the access within 2 months. So we want to make sure again that no one can have access to the information that that will be, potentially risky for anyone.
Great, thank you. I think another question was more around the mechanics of it, like the tool that we use, and also what sort of benefits are we seeing from collecting this data?
Mm-hmm. The tool is, I think, back in the days, is actually based on using SAP database. It's a bit technical, but SAP database and an interface. So the interface is very simple. And now we are on the verge of moving to Workday. So we will actually move to Workday, and they will use actually a survey tool that they have within Workday. And the important thing actually is not the tool itself, but how you manage security. That's the most tricky part, I think. You can encrypt everything, you can double tokens, everything, but you have to make sure that the access to the data is very much limited to the people who need it. So someone, to be honest, you, Stephen, as a pride lead for Dallas, you could not get access to this because it's not relevant for your job. The IND lead for North America could do that because she has really something to do that. One of the things that we do, for example, and I'm talking about the countries in which we have more access to data or the legislation is easy to comply with, is that we can, for example, see how many of the people who answered, for example, the question about this one here about being bisexual, gay, or lesbian, or others, where they are, if they're senior or if they are not senior. So if we see that, for example, people are out and they are LGBTQ until they get to a certain level of the organization, which in the case of Accenture, that would be, for example, manager level, but then they decide to leave or they decide to to do something else, then we kind of start addressing why don't we keep any of the senior leaders that are LGBTQ? This is not the case, by the way, but it would be one thing that we could do in a few countries. Another thing is, for example, I can tell you that in a few countries, and that's a bit of a shame, we know that we don't have any senior leaders. So if I go to India, if I go to Japan, if I go to China, we don't have any senior leaders that are LGBT and they're out. So basically that is one kind of wake-up call for us to talk to the leadership teams in those countries and raise the question, why do you think that is? Again, it's not about blaming because you cannot get people out of the closet. We don't want to out anyone, but we want people in the countries to be aware that it's part of their job to make sure that the leadership team is diverse. So having not a lesbian colleague or a lesbian or a gay colleague in Japan probably affects the way that our 11,000 employees in Japan will think about coming out. When you have someone as a reference, and I think we have very good reference in this company for many years, and then you feel more empowered. You feel like that person is there, and the name of Sander comes to mind. If Sander is there, then I can also be myself, and I think that's very important to have role models as well. Any other questions, Stephen? Or
You're covering it all in case you want to.
Well, I just, Stephen, I'd rather
Okay.
just add one more question. I see keep coming up, which is a very central one, which is why and the benefits. Like people are asking, when they go to the senior leadership, they don't see the value of collecting this data. Like, why do we do it?
And that's one thing, for example, if I go to this one, the gender identity one, which you see here on the left, you could see that we have 2% of people who respond to the survey who define themselves as non-binary. Our tools were actually before, like maybe 2 years back or something, they were also, allowing for male or female responses in some of the fields. When you apply for a job at Accenture or when you get your paycheck and all those things, it was just very binary based. So we actually, thanks to this information, we changed our tools. Another thing that we did, for example, when we talk about, we have like an internal, I would say, Facebook page within Accenture that we call it people pages, and then you can actually put your pronouns. If we have people who are non-binary and they have different pronouns that what is expected, basis of their name, then they can actually put that. So basically, knowing how your employees are advancing, are included, are seen, helps you as an HR person, which I am now, to see, maybe we need to start, a leadership program for LGBT people in Japan or in China or in India. So I think it gives us insight. For example, I think we talk about quotas for gender, for women. We always say we have to get to 50-50, 50% women, 50% male. I think we don't want maybe to go so far, but I think it could be one way that we actually say we want to have at least 2% of LGBTQ employees in 2025. I'm just guessing something here. So having data, having numbers will allow the HR team and the management team and the leadership team to realize if we are diverse or not, because we want to be diverse. We all know the benefits of being diverse and to being inclusive. But if we are all the same at the table, then basically we are not diverse. And this is one way of measuring that.
I would also add one thing, which is that, no one operates in a vacuum anymore. And our clients, just like we do, want to know about our inclusion and diversity efforts and who we are as a company. And they ask general information around I&D. And we want to be able to reflect that as well. So I think that's important.
Yeah, that's a good point indeed. If that's okay, I'll go to the next one. And again, questions can be coming back if needed. The next tool that we're going to talk about is the Pride Scorecard. We are maybe thinking of changing the name to Pride Index. So maybe you will see it in the future with different name. But what we do is basically we want to measure how good or how bad sometimes countries are performing at Accenture. I want to know how Accenture Italy is doing or how Accenture Canada is doing. And I'm talking not about the country Canada or the country Italy, how inclusive they are in terms of legislation, society acceptance, danger in case the person is in danger. We want to talk about how the Accenture office is, how we are in that country. So every 6 months, we send a questionnaire with around 50 questions to all HR leads and I&D leads, inclusion diversity leads in the country. So that basically means that we send the questions to France and to the US and to South Africa and to Argentina. And then they give us, we give them 2 weeks to answer or 3 weeks to answer, and then we basically evaluate the questions, a bit like an exam, you could say. And the questions are mainly on 4 different areas. You see them there on the screen in purple or in pink, depending how your screen is. We talk about leadership. How is the leadership in the country? And by that I mean the Accenture leadership. How is the managing team of that country in terms of LGBT inclusiveness? How is the talent? How are we doing actions to get more talent, which is LGBTQ? How is the culture? How inclusive is the culture and the workplace? Are we including everyone? Or do we have explicit ways of including people? And then how much, and that's something that also Christian mentioned in the beginning, how much are we doing externally? So how much are we doing externally in Canada or in the UK or in Spain or in Portugal or in Poland or in Russia, for example? So basically with those 50 questions, we kind of measure a little bit how the country is performing on LGBT matters. And you will see the questions, I think, in a moment. Yes. I have not put all the questions, but you see, the number of questions per area. So for example, for leadership, let's start from the first one. We have 10 questions, and let's put a few of them there. Is the country lead supportive? So basically we have a country managing director in each country that is the boss of the country. And we always want to know if them if they are actually supportive. Have they talked about LGBTQ matters explicitly, and have they talked about it positively? Do we have any LGBTQ plus leaders, for example? Do we have a sponsor for the network or the ERG? Do we have a network or an ERG? What is the percentage of senior leaders that are allies? You know, we have an ally program within Accenture, so we want to make sure how many of them are allies. And how many employees have been to the L3 training? The L3 training is a training we give for high potential employees who are LGBTQ or very, very strong allies. So you see that we measure a little bit how the management of a country is, how friendly they are or how unfriendly they could be, or how are they advancing. Imagine that we have a new boss in a country and they are very good in business, but they have not done much on LGBT matters. Then we will not give them points on the question number one. We make sure that we actually measure that very well. The next one we go is we talk about, for example, talent. Have you promoted or you use the self-ID program that I just talked about? Do you promote and use the Pride mentoring program? Do you have specific LGBTQ plus recruitment plans? Do you go to fairs? Do you have some ads or some, targets to make sure that you are diverse in your recruitment? And that would be for talent. Then I'll go to the next one, which is 27 questions on being inclusive. Do you host LGBTQ awareness activities like an ally session or training or learning? What is the number of Pride allies that you have? I think I will mention it later, but we have around now, I think 125,000 allies. So basically 1 out of 4 employees is an ally at Accenture. Really happy. But we want to know, for example, if that is a number that is applicable for, let's say, London or for Beijing, if it's the same in Singapore or in Sydney. So we want to make sure that we measure that as well. What is the number of, what's the budget that the ERGs get? And the budget we calculated per employee. So basically, it's not the same, the ERG for Dallas than the ERG for New York. Sorry, Stephen. Do we have inclusive benefits? Do people have access to healthcare, to pension, to life insurance, to parental leave, all those things? Do you offer transgender health benefits? Do you cover the transgender transition costs for employees who define themselves as transgender? Do you have no gender policy? Do you talk about father or mother, or do you talk about parents, for example? How is the language in the policy? Then we also talk about, do you have all gender bathrooms, for example? Do you have them in all facilities or only in a few ones? That's the idea. Are the employees wearing the lanyard? We have a lanyard that I should have with me, but I forgot, which is a rainbow one, and then you can show to others when we are in the office that we are actually an ally or that we are part of the network. Do people wear it? I was in the office in Tokyo last year, and it was actually excellent to see how, from the reception, already someone was wearing the lanyard. So, it was the first time I was there, and then you enter there and you see someone with the lanyard, and then you're like, yes, I'm home. This is my home. And also, has the country hosted an L3, again, LGBT leaders learning training that we have? Because if you have hosted that, then you kind of understand a bit more the programs that we have. And then the ninth questions we have left, is external engagement. Do we have any awards? Have we received any awards, like, for example, HSC that I think we have? Or do we have anything that has been resonating with the ecosystem that we have? Are you a member of LGBTQ plus organizations? Are you a member of, Out and Equal, for example, this conference? Or have you hosted external LGBTQ events? Do we do events with clients? Do we do events with third parties? And that's one thing that we also want to make sure that we don't only talk about Pride and inclusion internally, but also externally. I don't know if there are any questions on this.
There are a couple of questions about the programs you mentioned. One is, what is L3 and what all does that cover?
I would need to have another half an hour for L3. You have been to one, Stephen, so maybe you can add a few things if I forget. But L3 is actually a 2.5-day training that we give in 5 regions. So 1 in North America, 1 in Latin America, 1 in Europe, and 1 in Asia Pacific. And we invite employees who are high potential to, and who are performing really well and are LGBTQ or very, very strong allies. So basically it's a combination of both. And then in 2 days, we talk about how to be yourself, how to present yourself, how to make meaningful conversations with people, how to make sure that you include your true self in conversations, how to come out in a proper way. And at the end of the day, basically at the end of the training, people feel hopefully more empowered to go back to their office and do more things for Pride. That would be basically one way of activating the ERGs. I don't want to say it's an ERG 101, but it's actually ERG 101 plus leadership, plus communication skills, plus storytelling, plus a few other things that we think is needed to be a good leader at Accenture. So it's a bit of I would say, crash course, to be a good leader while being yourself. Stephen, I don't know if you want to add anything because you went to one as well. So
I think that was a great summary. It's a very impactful 2.5 days. It's great because you get to meet people from different levels and across the firm that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise. And it's a great time to come together with both the Pride community as well as the allies of the firm, which was another question that was asked is, what's the difference between the Ally program versus the Pride at Accenture network? How do we distinguish?
Good. Thank you for that. The Pride is basically, usually, not everyone, because I'm also an ally, obviously, but Pride is actually a way for every employee to show that they are supportive for LGBTQ people. So basically, they go to a page, they read a few things about what it means to be an ally, and basically for us means 4 main things. And I will go quickly through this, but there are many things that we talk about. You have to be visible, so you have to show that you're an ally. You have to wear a lanyard, or you have to wear a pin, or you have to, in your signature say, I'm an ally. You have to be vocal. If you see something, you should say something. Maybe not on the moment, but maybe just like 5 minutes later, you have to call someone out because something that happened at the office was not inclusive, or you maybe could discuss about it. You have to be knowledgeable. You have to know about the topic. I mean, we don't expect everyone to know all the single letters of the Pride family because there's many of them, and I'm also learning every day myself. But we want to make sure that they have, basic knowledge about what is being LGBT. And then when they have, all this knowledge and they have read this, they can click and say, I want to be an ally. And they click on that, and then on their people pages or the internal Facebook page, there is a little button that comes up, a bit of a flare, and then they get a rainbow there, and then they get allies. They get to be an ally. So that's the ally program. The Pride at Accenture network, the ERG, is usually, and then not everywhere, but usually the core team that actually in every city will plan activities like a brown bag session or like a Pride parade when we could march physically. Or maybe a breakfast to do something, or maybe a dinner, or maybe anything that we do for the LGBT community and the allies. It is so that many of the ERGs are led by LGBTQ plus people, but actually we have lots of ERGs who are led by straight allies, which, for example, like the one in Sweden, the one in Denmark, the one in Romania. So basically, it's really heartwarming. Actually, it's really nice to see that we have allies so engaged that they actually want to fight our fight, if I can say it like that. So it's really, I think, also, sorry, I forgot Atlanta, because I know that probably they're in the call as well. So Atlanta as well, I think probably a couple of them as well in Denver. So but there's a few people, that are ERG leads. I don't know if that answered the question, Stephen?
I think that does. And there were a few questions specific to the scorecard too, in terms of, does it go out to every country? Do they all have to answer to it? And who is that data shared with?
What was the last part, sorry?
Who do you share the results of the scorecard with?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, so it goes to every country. I don't think every country likes it, because we also send it to Saudi Arabia, for example, or we also send it to countries that are less, LGBTQ friendly. They have to answer it, and sometimes the answer is no, and then that's if the law is the law, we always have to respect the law. So we always can have a conversation about what is possible, but it goes everywhere. And when we have the results, we share it with the HR team back in the countries. And we also share it with the leadership team in the countries. So we want to make sure that if we know that, for example, again, Japan is performing really well, then we want the Japan business lead to make sure that they know that this is the case. So that's what we do with the card. Yeah.
Great.
Good. I'll go to a few of the things that we do. This is for example, some of the, again, it's a horrible, I mean, it's, it looks really nice when I talk about it, but it's actually a horrible spreadsheet and SharePoint and all those things that you have to fill in. But you see a little bit, for example, for North America, how we are doing. You see for example, the score. The score is actually fiscal year 1 was for North America. For Canada was 75, and 6 months later was actually 77. So they went up. We measured that. And for the US, it was 83% of the 100% that they can get, and they went up to 84%. So they also went up a little bit. So again, we measured, and you see the points per different area here. So you see actually where they could do better or perform more points if they want. And again, every 6 months we also give them 3 advices to do for the coming 6 months. So we want to make sure that every country advances on that. I'll share another screen with the top. So again, not really surprises in terms of the countries that are more inclusive. You see here the ranking for Accenture. Again, this is not the countries as such. It's actually Accenture countries, how the countries are performing in that. So you see again how things were. For example, United Kingdom in the first quarter, in the first time we measured this last year, was actually 86, another 88, and Australia was at 80, another 86. So again, you see, let me move you a little bit up. So you see a little bit how people change. Sometimes countries also go back and they lose a little bit, 1% or 2%. That could be because a few leaders have left, or the network lead, the ERG lead also left. And then we want to maybe, we have to readjust a little bit. And that is part of life. I think, when someone that is very, very active chooses to do something else in the company, or they want to take a step back, then, there's always a bit of a gap. So that's why I think we want to make sure that we measure this and we see the results. Some surprising results here as well, because many people from maybe Latin America are also in the call. Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, Chile, actually, you would think that maybe they are not very, very inclusive, from what you hear on the news, or, violence, especially in Brazil, for transgender people. I think in terms of Accenture, we have to say that actually they're in the top 15 of countries that we have. So really, really round of applause for all Latin, because actually you see they're actually as inclusive as the other countries in, let's say, in less time in terms of getting to there. Any questions on this?
There is one question sort of about the methodology behind the scorecard. In terms of those 4 areas that you mentioned that we evaluate countries on, is there one that's weighted more or differently, or are they all weighted the same?
Yes, we weight more leadership and we weight more inclusive culture. So I think they account for 30 or 30%, and the other 2 are 20 or 20%, because we think that external engagement is nice, it's important, but at the end it's about how employees feel in the office. So having all gender bathrooms, having transgender benefits, and having a leader that talks about LGBTQ is more relevant than hosting an event with clients, with all the respect for clients, obviously. Good. Then I go to the nice slides, which is, an example about how we represent this, in a physical way a little bit. So this is for Europe, and you can see again, the best country is the UK. We have leadership and talent on the vertical axis, and we have cultural and external engagement on the horizontal one. So you see, this is an old version because I didn't want to show the last one so that people would not do it, would not, be offended. But UK is the best, and you can see again, Russia, Bulgaria, Hungary, Greece, a bit behind. So another thing to remark, for example, Denmark in the middle and Sweden, they are actually LGBTQ paradises for us all, I think. You all hear about, how the Nordics are really an example of inclusion. But maybe from the Accenture office, we still have to do a few more things, because you see that, for example, Italy here, Austria here, Spain here. So actually, you see that we measure the Accenture office and not the country itself. And good. This is again, every country gets a recommendation for the coming 6 months, so no issue with that. And then some examples about how countries can perform. I think this is how Russia was in 2018. Then they did something a little bit, a few things internally, externally. They got more allies. They did an event as well. We had an equality week. And then you see how actually they're going up a little bit. So that's a nice thing, that actually countries can see how they perform or how they stay at the same level. And then they can, act or at least be aware about where they are. This is for India, the right on the right for India. You see, 2018 actually is when the law was repealed, the law that was actually making LGBT or gay sex illegal in the country. And it was a huge boost for that year. I think, India went up a lot, and now it's a bit more stable. But the important thing is the more they go up and to the right, the more they actually advance for our employees in those countries. Good. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's the one. There are some of the benefits. The idea of the benefits of having this kind of tool, the Pride Scorecard or the Pride Index, which we are thinking about renaming it, is actually, we have a global intention and we have the customization for the local environment. So for example, we cannot ask Russia to get at the level that the US is. That's not feasible. That's actually not even possible, I think. So what we do is we give them a small target, which we, maybe like 10% or 5% increase in a year, depending on where they are. So for example, for countries that are now very, very, maybe at 0, which are very hostile for LGBT people, we also give them a target of 5% so that they work on allies, or maybe an equality week, or maybe something like that. So again, everyone gets their own customized target, if I can say it, even though it's not really a target as such. The second one is we identify the areas that countries can to work on. So for example, for China would be work on allies, but for Japan would be maybe work on leadership, or maybe all gender bathrooms. So we give them a bit of a homework every 6 months, and then they can come back to us saying, okay, I need help, or I couldn't do it, or then we can work together to get there. We have regular feedback and content and contact, with the local IND and the Pride leads. So these results are sent to the local teams as I said, to the Pride lead, to the ERG lead in Tokyo, or the one in Beijing, or the one in Hong Kong, or the one in Dallas, or the one in, they see all of this information, and then they can act on it, or share it with their team and say, hey guys, this is how we score. What do you think? Can we do something different next time? We also share best practices. I think it's really good to know that, for example, when someone does a campaign to get more allies or to promote self-ID, you know, because self-ID is not something that everyone will want to do. You have to promote it. When someone has a good campaign or a good idea, then they can actually, you know, copy paste it from other people. So it's kind of not reinventing the wheel, and making sure that things are shared and people, you know, work together on things. Number 5 is very important because it's kind of a local ownership of Pride. So basically, it's not global telling them you have to do this, you should do this. We kind of now have reached a point in which actually the local ERGs and the local IND person wants to get better. It's not something that has to come from global. You know, it's actually us in the headquarters saying you should do this, but they see us as kind of, you know, the team that can help, and that's very important because we don't want to be in this ivory tower saying this is the ideal world from what I am in Amsterdam when I don't know the situation in Russia. We have to make sure that we accommodate the reality of those things. Also, number 6 would be that actually people are a bit accountable for it. So you can actually track and say, you know, if someone would not advance, you could say you're stable for the last 3 times or the last, you know, 18 months. And then, you know, at least you can have the conversation about, you know, are you happy with that? Are you comfortable? Is there a reason for that? You can actually kind of address the analysis and the cause that could be behind that. It could be maybe a very valid reason, whatever is the reason. And what I really like a lot is that we also have, that's the last point, short-term and long-term settings. So for example, again, we give them something simple like, you know, making a quality week in the office, or plan some kind of communication about allies. So we make it very tangible for them, small things and also long things. I think we have a target to get to, I'm thinking like probably 200,000 allies in 3 years, but we cannot give them that at the moment. So we give them a bit of a small target so that they can, you know, they can actually accept it, and it's not too far.
Great, thank you. And there was one question, if an employee moves from an area that's sort of rated as highly inclusive, maybe to somewhere else that's a little bit lower on the scale, how does Accenture work with them about like informing them about the move and what to expect? And
So that happens a lot. As you know, we do projects all over the world, so we have to go where the clients are. And I have been myself in Russia for a project, you know, years back when I was in cloud consulting. And we had a couple of things that we do. You can always say that you don't want to go. So if you are sent to a country and you think that you're not comfortable being there, then you can just say, I don't want to do it for whatever reason. You don't have to give it. It's just, you know, this is not for me. The second thing is we have travel LGBTQ page that you can actually check and see how the information is per country. So you can see how friendly or unfriendly, how safe or unsafe the country is. Again, not the Accenture office, but the country. And at the end, also, to be honest, it's the choice of the employee. The employee can choose to do it. I always think that it's better. I always thought about myself, you know, what if they invite me to do a session for on LGBT things in a difficult country, let's say in Saudi Arabia, again, because it's one of the difficult ones. What do I do? Would I go or would I not go? And I always think, like, you know, it's better to engage in the conversation with them and than to just say, no, I will not go. Because I think that, I know that Accenture has my back. I know that Accenture will support me and will, you know, do things. And I remember when I was in Russia for work, I used to work for a coffee, within Accenture for a coffee project, you know, the largest coffee company in the world. And I was going there every 2 weeks to Moscow and to St. Petersburg. And you know, I was having dinner with the client and drinks. You always have lots of drinks with clients as well. And I was thinking, you know, there's going to be a moment that he's going to ask me, you know, what is your family like, or what is your private life like? And then you think, like, what do I do? I don't want to jeopardize my relationship. It's really good. The project is really going really well. So what should I do? And then, you know, I kind of took a leap of faith, and I think it was a 5th or 6th dinner, I don't remember. Then we after dinner, he asked me, like, so you have a girlfriend? And I thought, okay, let's see that, you know. And then I kind of, no, I actually have a partner. And then he understood, and I didn't know. I'm so happy for you, and I'm sorry that this country is so unfriendly. So basically, I always think that when you go to these countries and you engage in the conversation, you can try to influence them a little bit, and you can try to actually explain, you know, from human to human how things are. So for me, it worked really well. To be honest, it was really well perceived. But I also have some other colleagues that went to Saudi Arabia and had another different experience, and they choose not to go again. So basically, that's always your right at Accenture to not do a project if you don't want to do it. Okay. And I think we're getting to the end a little bit. Some of the results I repeated, I think, by having these measurements and by measuring the rainbow, as we call it, which is kind of a, I think, impossible thing to do, but we're trying to do it, is we have so many networks that you can see. We have the jump number of ALEs from 37,000 to 125,000. We have now 11 countries offering transgender health benefits. And that's also something that has to do with, for example, the self-ID tool. Thanks to the self-ID tool, now we can also see where our employees are who identify as transgender. And we know that we have a couple of countries with many transgender employees, more than 100, more than 150. And we want to make sure that those countries offer transgender health benefits. So again, one of the benefits of self-ID is knowing where the employees are and where do we have to bring up our game in terms of benefits so that they feel included and everyone feels included. We also have increasing mentoring. Again, that's also one thing that is being measured. We have now almost equal benefits everywhere, and we still have a couple of countries to go because some of the things take too long. To be honest, when you talk about pension and you talk about insurance companies and all those things, it takes really long. We also, most of the countries we have, or I would say 98%, we have local leadership commitments. So the country managing director has realized that they needs to be inclusive and needs to talk about it because it's part of the business as well. So we kind of also get in leadership commitment there. And we see that since we start measuring, which is 2016, I think, with the Pride scorecard, we have been advancing every single year. So countries go back for one semester and then they go back to the next one. So actually, we see that countries are getting better and better. What we do sometimes, because some of the countries, especially the US and Canada and Australia and the UK, that they are actually so advanced that we have to raise the bar every now and then. So whenever someone gets too close to 100, we raise it up again. Sorry for those. But we want to make sure that no one is perfect and that we keep advancing on the numbers. And I think that's kind of it. I don't know if there are any other things that we can talk about.
I don't see any questions at the moment. If anybody has anything else, just put it in the chat. We're still looking at it. So.
I also want to say that if you want to reach out to us, you have their address, Stephen. You can also mention your address. I think it's Stephen something at newcom@accenture.com. So basically, you can reach out to us. Happy to talk to anyone or to share more information if I can share, obviously. I kind of selected a few of the data points because I didn't want to select. I couldn't release all the data, but there's many things that I can talk about, but I don't want to share because of privacy or maybe some sensitive information. But I'm happy to talk to anyone if they want to.
There's a question about how you got organizational support to implement this scorecard.
And that is actually a couple of things that are really important. For us, I think having senior leaders that are LGBTQ is key. And in this case, we had actually a couple of them. We had Sander, who was on the board. Sander from North India. I don't know if he's in the call, could be because he's also part of Art & Equal. And he actually helped us to get many of these things approved and support and budget for things, because all these things, to be honest, making a tool, making a self-ID tool, asking people, they always, that always costs money. So that's for sure something we have to get. We also have our CIO, Andrew Wilson, who was LGBTQ as well, who is sorry LGBTQ. I don't know why I say was. And that also helps a lot, because when you have someone very senior to get things done, and you have someone very technical who can get things done, then actually that's a perfect combination. So I think that we were really lucky in that period, because we could get lots of things done easily, because there was an interest and there was a budget and there was know-how how to do it. So that was kind of the thing to do it. And now it's basically maintaining the systems and upgrading them here and there, or adding a question, or doing a couple of minor changes. But now it's kind of, I would say it's embedded in our business. I think everyone would know that this is part of inclusion and diversity. The same as we measure how many women and how many men we have, we want to make sure that we also measure a few other things as well. So it's part of our everyday IND job, let's say.
Great, thank you. And Christian, I think this one may be for you. How do we engage our clients in the topic of LGBT inclusion?
Yeah, so it's interesting because, when we started going external and doing events like at Davos, as I mentioned, and with other partners, It was kind of us going out there, and then there were like-minded companies and organizations that we'd all find each other and do these things together. And it kind of happened in ad hoc fashion. And now this has gotten to be so much more bigger than it has been when it started, you know, like 5-10 years ago. And now what's happening is that a couple of things are happening. Number one, I&D itself as a subject, as everybody knows, is just hot as it can get, and incredibly important for companies. And we're all holding each other accountable, and that's kind of the big difference. So no one feels like they're going at this alone. And so clients are coming to us because they need help, because there hasn't been a lot of formal organization of this in their own organizations. If there was an I&D chief in a company, he or she was alone in the sense that there weren't a lot of resources. And so there wasn't a lot of experience in putting together like the timeline that we saw in terms of an I&D journey, what that leads to and what you can accomplish. And so clients were coming to us. We would put out like a new research, let's just say, on LGBT and consumers, and what it meant in terms of, you know, if you're a retailer, in terms of your demographics. And we would we got new research, we put it out there, we put it out there, let's say in Seattle, San Francisco, Chicago, which is what I was involved with. And we just got an enormous response because people needed the information. So basically, clients were engaging with us because they didn't have the internal kind of resources and experience. And also because a lot of this data and research now is relatively new, and they want to have the information and have a discussion about it. So I think this is all kind of like new and exciting. What we're seeing is, you know, going beyond putting ourselves out there and self-identifying into now studying this. What makes a successful organization? What makes it successful in terms of being a business operator? So that's like the big difference that I see in how we're getting clients engaged.
Great, thank you. And Javier, we have a question about how we count non-binary employees and report that to the government.
Yeah, that's reported to the government. Okay,
That's required.
That's the next question. No, yeah. How do we count them? Now we are changing the charters as we speak. I think, you know, we had a migration last week, and we're gonna keep doing that. But we allow everyone to actually have two main fields in terms of gender. One is the legal gender, and we have to collect that, you know, because we have to, you know, do things with insurance companies and pension schemes and all those things. So you have a field to fill in, which is legal gender. That will be the gender of your passport or the gender on your driving license. And the other one would be your identified gender. So how do you identify yourself? And then obviously they could be different depending on how you are, how you feel. So basically that's how we collect them. So what you see here is self-ID, which is a separate tool in which we ask people, you know, to define themselves. But also we have some, you know, other fields that we fill in, which is legal gender and identified gender. And in terms of reporting, I want to think, but I would have to check that. So I will look it up, that we have to report, that's my impression, the legal gender, not the identified gender, because I think that the government could not ask for what you identify with, I guess. So it will be the legal gender. I know, for example, in a few countries, that would be Germany, India, and a few other ones, I think, Argentina, they have now what they call, I don't think it's the right term, but they call it third gender, which is basically you can have another option than male and female. You can actually select an X, or you can select, you know, whatever it is. When I go to India for work, I know that when I apply for a visa, to go there for a visa, I always have to select if I'm male, female, transgender male, or transgender female. So I guess in those countries, we would report those fields, but we always have to, report the legal obligation in terms of that. So I think that would be the legal gender and not the identified gender. And the other question you had, I think, no, that was everything, or not?
That was it for that one. There have been a few questions around the team structure that Accenture has in place to make all these programs come to life. Yeah, so I think I'm part of the global team. Again, I think we have probably around 15, 20 people. I'm not sure. And then we have local teams in the countries. We have, and that's really important to know. I mean, this is all about LGBT, but I have a colleague next to me doing gender, which is the balance between male and female, and the non-binary as well.
And we also have someone doing ethnicity. We have someone doing disabilities, and we have also someone doing mental health. We have someone doing veterans. So basically, we have different teams, different work streams in terms of how we work. That's the global team. We cannot set up the strategy, the tools, the main, programs like gender balance, or like, for example, LGBTQ allies, or the Pride scorecard, or the LGBT benefits. And then the countries will just implement them or run them. That's the way it works. Next to that, we also have an excellent, I would say, IT administration team in India. Without IT, we would be nowhere because we have to measure what we have. So the IT team in India and Buenos Aires, I should say, because they're also in Argentina, two teams. They manage a bit of, I would say, most of the back office or the, let's say the data analysis, analytics that we use for all the programs, that being gender or LGBTQ or ethnicity, we have that. And then next to that, we also have, I should say, an excellent team in the US who's doing marketing communications. If we don't have that, we can do the best thing in the world, but if we don't communicate it properly internally or externally, then no one would know. So I think we have to make sure that that team, and Stephen is part of that team, is actually one of the main pieces of the team. Otherwise, we could not get and reach the people that we want to reach.
Great, thank you. And another one is about Pride mentoring. Can you explain how that channel is sort of set up and how that program works?
Yeah, we have two different programs. One is the regular mentoring, in which we actually have, I would say, someone who wants to be mentored, and a mentor and mentee, and we have a special LGBT chapter for that. So you can actually look for an LGBTQ mentor, or as a mentor, you can look for an LGBTQ mentee. And what we do is actually that we connect them both, and then we bring them together, all discreetly. So basically, no one needs to see that. And then if I want to have a mentor in New York, because I think my career would be benefiting from that, I can just have that. And then on the other hand, we also have mentees who would like to maybe be coached by someone, or a mentor who will to learn something from a mentee. I think we have right now about probably I would say 300 mentors-mentees relationships in different countries. We have it globally available, so I think it's very much used in especially Latin and especially Eastern Europe, really a lot. So I think that if you're in a country with no LGBTQ leaders and you want to have access to someone, you can actually choose to have someone in London or in New York or in Amsterdam, for example. So it's good to have that. And the other part of mentoring that we have is reverse mentoring, which is actually when we couple someone, usually very senior, but again, there are exceptions, with someone very, very junior and very, very LGBT, I would say savvy, very knowledgeable about the topic. And then we try to actually exchange points of view between someone who does know a lot, which is the young person about LGBTQ, and someone who doesn't know so much about LGBTQ, and they need to get a bit of education on that. And that's kind of interesting as well, because you realize that actually being older doesn't mean, in this case, it's not always being wiser. So it's interesting. And actually, there is another session on this in the conference on I think it's Thursday afternoon, I'm guessing, done by colleagues of mine talking about reverse mentoring. So and that how we do it at Accenture. That would be something to maybe attend if someone has interest in that. You're on mute, Stephen, I think.
Thank you. Yes. There's a couple of questions about the scorecard. One is, could you clarify who all responds to that, if it's every employee within a region, and then also if we have plans or if we already have in place scorecards for different segments of diversity that we...
Yeah, sorry. The scorecard is sent to the HR lead, or human resources lead, and the pride lead of a country. So basically, it doesn't go to all employees. The results may go to all employees if they want, but the filling the information is actually only the HR lead and the IND lead of a country. And then this is the scorecard for LGBTQ, for pride, but we have also similar scorecards for gender, I think for ethnicity. We have scorecards like that in a few countries, not everywhere, but we have them in the US, in UK and South Africa that I know of, I think. And then we have them also for disabilities in many countries as well. So we have, for example, disabilities would be also very interesting to see, do you have wheelchair access? Do you have accessible bathrooms? Do you have policies for, accessible programs? Can people who are colorblind see work with a tool? So basically, this is just one of the tools that we have, but we have many of them. And to be honest, this is all, again, part of the global IND team, again, supported by the leadership. And also, I should also mention by our CEO, also Julie Sweet, who's behind, making sure that we bring all this to life.
Great, thank you. There's also a question about how we work in terms of advocacy externally in the different countries.
That's also a very interesting question. It's also for another talk, for another session, because it's a lot to talk about. What we do is we have defined, we call it 20-step framework, because we are consultants, so we want to have frameworks and tools and stepped approach. So and we actually answer 20 questions before we engage publicly on something. So we have just on a major thing, we would ask, if something would happen, raise up in a country, we want to know if, for example, our employees would be in danger if we do anything. If we speak up, will anyone be in danger from Accenture? If that is a yes, then obviously we'll probably not do it. Then the second one is, can we be effective? Can we actually achieve change? Because if we ask for the impossible in certain places, in certain countries, it will, even if we shout or if we do whatever, it will not happen. So it has to be somewhere attainable. It has to be something that is kind of, in sight. Are we alone? Are we the only ones doing that? Or are we together with other companies? I think that those are a few things that we do. Then we also involve, again, the marketing communications team so that they know what the communication externally will be like. We also involve the government relationship because we do business with lots of governments. So we want to make sure that, we also take that into account, that we are not affecting, negatively part of our colleagues, of our business. So we have, again, a framework with, I think, 20 questions that we go over. And when all of the questions, or most of them, are done with a yes, then we will engage. We have done that in Australia. We have done that in the Czech Republic. We have done it in Poland, in the US lots of times. I think a couple of times. The last one, I think in Georgia, in Atlanta last year, if I'm not mistaken, or this year, I think. So we do that regularly, to be honest. We do it usually together with others, because I think it's good to do it as, with other companies. We are not the best ones, we're not the worst ones. We want to be together with others to fight for equality. It doesn't make sense for us to be the only ones standing up against something.
Great, thank you. And Derek, I'm seeing a couple of things that were missing some of the questions. I don't know if you see another feed that I don't have visibility on, but if there's any questions that you've seen come through that we haven't addressed, it'd be great to. If not, looks like the pings are slowing down at the moment. So if there's any closing remarks or.
Maybe Christian, I don't know if you want to say anything at the end before I go?
No, just thank you everybody for taking part, and it's great to share our story. And hats off to you, Javier and Steven, for a great presentation.
Christian, Steven, thanks a lot as well for managing everything and everything that you do for the Pride Network. From my side, just again, thank you for listening. I hope you have a good conference. There are a few sessions also, again, by colleagues, which I think very interesting. Again, the mentoring one, I think, is one of them. There's also another one, I think, being recorded for a few other topics. So if you have any questions, happy to connect with you. And have a good conference. Enjoy the day. And I hope that you don't spend too much time in front of your laptop. Go get some rest, I think, because it's well deserved. So thank you, and goodbye from Amsterdam. Have fun.
Bye. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.